If you're reading this, it means I've already broken the most important rule. Never talk about what happens after midnight. I know how that sounds. Like one of those spooky internet stories you scroll past before bed. The kind you laugh at and forget by morning. I used to do the same. Before I took this job, I thought mall security meant coffee, boredom, and chasing away the occasional teenager trying to skateboard in the food court. But boredom would have been a blessing. The truth is, I don't think I'll live long enough to regret writing this. And if I do, maybe putting it into words will make me feel less insane. Because if I'm crazy, at least it means none of this is real. At least it means the mannequins aren't watching me right now as I type this. See, every night at the stroke of midnight, the mall changes. Not in ways you'd notice on a camera feed. The hallways stretch just a little too far. Reflections linger in the glass storefronts after you've already walked past. You hear your own footsteps echoing, except you've stopped moving. And the rules, God, the rules. I'll explain them later, I promise. That's the part that keeps me awake even when the shift is over, when I'm lying in bed staring at the ceiling. The fact that someone else already knew. Someone wrote them down. Someone survived long enough to warn the rest of us. But before I get to that, you need to understand something. I didn't believe any of this at first. I thought it was just another night shift job. That was before I heard the laughter in the locked arcade. Before I realized I wasn't the only one working after hours. And whatever's out there, it doesn't want me telling you this. When I first started working the night shift, I thought it was going to be the easiest paycheck I'd ever earned. A few cameras to monitor, the occasional door to check, a radio crackling with the other guards' chatter. That was it. I'd done worse jobs for less money. The mall felt different at night, though. During the day, it was chaos. Families shopping, kids screaming, the smell of pretzels and fried chicken wafting through the air. But when the gates rolled down and the last car left the parking lot, it became a hollow shell of itself. Quiet. Too quiet. I'd make my rounds through the food court first. Even after hours, the grease smell clung to the air, thick and stale. The arcade always caught my eye next. Rows of dead machines glowing faintly with their screensaver lights, as if waiting for someone to drop in a quarter. If I stood there long enough, I swore I could hear faint jingles playing from nowhere. Then came the storefronts. High-end clothing shops with glass displays, jewelry counters covered by steel shutters, mannequins dressed in whatever fashion the day demanded. Mannequins were the worst. During the day they looked harmless, stiff and plastic, frozen in fake smiles. But walking past them at night, with the dim security lights reflecting in their glossy eyes, it felt like they were waiting for me to slip up. Sometimes I'd look twice, convinced an arm had shifted or a head tilted slightly. I told myself it was just exhaustion, that overnight work was already playing tricks on me. The cleaning crew was usually around for a couple of hours, sweeping floors and emptying trash, and I clung to their presence like a lifeline. Once they were gone, it was just me, the cameras, and the echo of my own footsteps. That first week, nothing truly happened. No alarms, no break-ins, nothing out of the ordinary. But the unease never left. The mall didn't feel abandoned, felt paused, like everything was holding its breath, waiting for something I couldn't yet see. And every night, I had the nagging sense that I wasn't alone. It was on my second week that I found the rulebook. I thought it was a prank at first, the kind of hazing older guards play on new hires. But as I flipped through the pages, my smile faded. The list wasn't long, but every line carried the same quiet weight as a warning whispered in the dark. The first one read, "Never look directly at the mannequins after midnight. They don't like it when you stare." The second, "If you hear footsteps behind you and the mall is empty, keep walking. Do not turn around." Then, food court bathroom, stall number 3, "Never unlock it. Ever." The next rule was even stranger. If you see a child wandering alone, do not approach. Report it to the cameras and wait. If the child insists on following you, do not let it hold your hand. Another, the escalators will sometimes keep running after the power is off. Avoid stepping on them when they do. And finally, If you lose sight of the clock and realize it's past midnight, leave immediately. But if the doors don't open, stay very, very still until 6 a.m. There were more, written in rushed handwriting, with arrows and scratched-out notes as though someone had tried to update them over time. Some were so vague they felt like riddles. Do not feed them, and don't believe the announcements. I sat there with the papers in my hand, my pulse thudding. It was ridiculous, had to be, but the longer I stared at the rules, the more they gnawed at me. Who wrote them? Why hide them under the desk instead of filing a complaint with management? And why did the inked words feel less like jokes and more like survival instructions? I stuffed the packet back under the desk and told myself it was nothing. Just a scare tactic, some board guard's attempt at making the night shift more interesting. But deep down, I knew. Nobody writes rules like that unless they've seen something. It didn't take long for the rules to stop feeling like a joke. I told myself it was just bad wiring. Old malls are full of quirks. But then I passed the arcade. It was locked, all the machines dark, no one inside. Still, I heard it, just faintly, the cheerful 8-bit music of a game starting up. The sound was tinny, echoing out into the hall before fading into silence. I lingered, hand on the gate, trying to catch it again. That's when a voice whispered, low, close to my ear. I spun around, but the corridor behind me was empty. That was the first time I remembered the rule about footsteps and voices. Keep walking, don't turn around. Except I had turned, and nothing was there. Lucky me, I guess. Later, when I checked the elevators, one of them opened on its own. No call button pressed, no one inside. The doors stayed open, humming patiently, like it was waiting for me. I didn't step in. Something about the way the fluorescent light inside flickered made my skin crawl. I backed away and kept patrolling. The mall felt different that night. Larger somehow. The kind of empty that presses in on you, like you're walking through lungs that are holding their breath. I tried to shake it off. Told myself I was just tired, imagining things. Narrators always say that, don't they? Still, I couldn't stop thinking about those rules under the desk. Because the longer I worked, the more I wondered, what if they weren't warnings? What if they were instructions? I broke a rule without even realizing it. It was the mannequins. I'd been walking my usual patrol, coffee in one hand, flashlight in the other, when I passed the clothing store near the food court. They had those glossy, white-faced mannequins. Smooth heads, blank features. Their arms posed stiffly like they were frozen mid-dance. Normally I kept my eyes down, moving quick, but that night I paused. I don't even know why. Maybe I was daring myself. Maybe I was tired and reckless. Whatever the reason, I lifted my flashlight and let it sweep across their faces. That's when I made the mistake. I looked one of them directly in the eyes. Except it didn't have eyes. Just that shiny, empty plastic. Still, the moment I locked my gaze on it, I felt resistance, like it was staring back. My throat went dry, and before I could move, a sound echoed down the corridor. Slow, deliberate breathing. Not mine. Heavy. Wet. I spun, flashlight jerking across the polished floor. Nobody there. Just the hollow stretch of the mall. I told myself I was imagining it, but when I turned back toward the mannequin, something was wrong. His head, just slightly, was tilted in a new direction. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. The hairs on my neck stood straight. My instincts screamed at me to get out, but my legs wouldn't move. And that's when I heard it. A voice, right against my ear. Don't turn around. I froze, pulse hammering in my throat. The voice was low, commanding, like it belonged to someone who had been standing behind me the entire time. But I couldn't feel breath, couldn't hear footsteps. Just that whisper, replaying itself inside my skull. My flashlight flickered, then died, plunging the hallway into dim emergency light. I stood there, gripping the useless metal tube like a weapon, staring at the mannequin that shouldn't have moved. The silence pressed in so hard I thought I'd scream just to break it. Finally, I forced myself to step back, one slow shuffle at a time. I didn't turn. I didn't dare. But as I retreated down the hall, I swore I heard more breathing. This time, not just behind me. It was coming from the mannequins, too. I wasn't the only one working nights, though most shifts felt that way. There was one other guy, Carl. Grizzled, late 50s, the kind of man who looked like he'd been carved out of cigarette smoke and black coffee. He'd been at the mall longer than anyone, and if anyone knew the truth about those rules, it was him. The first time I mentioned them, he didn't laugh, didn't even blink. He just looked at me with those tired eyes and said, "Don't ask questions, just follow the rules. That's how you make it to morning." I tried pressing him. Who wrote them? Why the mannequins? What's with stall number 3? He shook his head, jaw tight. "You're new. You think it's all stories. But stories don't leave scratches on your arms. Stories don't stare at you from the camera feeds when the place is empty." The way he said it made my stomach flip. One night, during our handoff, Carl leaned close and muttered, "Management knows. They just don't care. Long as we keep the doors open during the day and the money flows, what happens at night is our problem." Then he walked away before I could ask more. I didn't see him for a few nights after that. His name disappeared from the schedule, replaced with mine, back-to-back shifts. No explanation. When I asked one of the daytime staff about Carl, she frowned. "Carl? We haven't had a Carl here in years." I wanted to argue, but the words caught in my throat. I still had his lighter, the one he'd left on the desk. Solid proof he was real. At least I hoped it was proof, because if it wasn't, then I had bigger problems than the mannequins. Midnight isn't just a time in that mall. It's an event. The first time I stayed long enough to see it, I thought the building itself was having a nervous breakdown. At 12 o'clock on the dot, every alarm panel on my monitors blinked red, screaming in unison. Not just one zone, all of them. Doors, windows, motion sensors. It was like the entire mall was under attack. Then, just as suddenly, the alarms cut off. The silence afterward was so deep it felt staged, like the mall was holding its breath. That's when the PA system clicked on. Normally, it only played morning announcements, generic stuff about sales and lost children. But at midnight, a voice hissed through the speakers. Not words exactly, more like syllables dragged across static, broken phrases that might have been language once. The sound seeped into every corner of the building, like it was coming from the walls themselves. The lights went next, not all at once, flickering in waves down the halls, rolling darkness swallowing storefronts until only a few emergency bulbs stayed on. The mall didn't just look empty anymore. It looked wrong, distorted. And then I heard it. Heavy footsteps echoing down the east corridor. Slow, deliberate, each one reverberating against the tile like a hammer strike. I froze at my station, staring at the camera feed. Nothing. The halls looked clear, but the footsteps grew louder, closer, until it felt like whatever was making them was just outside the office door. That was the moment I realized the rules weren't jokes. They weren't campfire stories or hazing rituals. They were survival guidelines. Someone had lived through this before me, long enough to write down the things you don't do if you want to see the sunrise. I sat in that chair, clutching Carl's lighter like it was a weapon, and whispered to myself, just follow the rules. Because out there, in the dark mall, something was moving, and it knew I was listening. Rule number 7. Do not, under any circumstances, open the maintenance door at the end of the South Hall. It sounded ridiculous when I first read it. A locked door in a mall. What's the worst it could hide? Cleaning supplies? A breaker box? But the wording had weight, like whoever wrote it didn't just mean don't go in. They meant don't even think about it. The South Hall is the quietest part of the building. No stores, no food courts, just blank white walls leading to that single, battered gray door. Normally, I avoided it without a second thought. But that night, after the alarms, after the whispers, after the footsteps, it was different. The door was unlocked. I swear, I heard the latch click by itself as I passed, like it was inviting me. A cold draft spilled out from the gap at the bottom, colder than the autumn night outside. I crouched, half expecting to see a vent or a broken seal. Instead, I saw movement, a shadow bending wrong, stretching across the floor as if something was standing just on the other side. My radio crackled. A voice whispered, "Don't open it." But it wasn't Carl. It wasn't anyone I knew. My hand hovered on the handle. Every instinct screamed that whatever was behind that door wasn't supposed to exist. That opening it would mean seeing something I could never unsee. I stepped back, slammed the padlock shut, walked away faster than I want to admit. But the sound followed me, scraping nails dragging across metal, tapping like impatient fingers. The worst part? That wasn't the only time the door tried to open. It began with the mannequins. I was doing my rounds near the clothing wing when I noticed one standing in the middle of the hall. Not behind glass, not inside a store, just there. Its head tilted unnaturally, as though straining to hear me breathe. I froze, remembering the first rule. Never look directly at them after midnight. Too late. A soft scuff echoed behind me. Another mannequin. Then another. They weren't sprinting, weren't lunging, just appearing one step closer each time I blinked. My radio hissed, "Keep moving. Don't stop." Carl's voice? No. Too distorted. Too urgent. I bolted, the pounding of my boots swallowed by the mall's cavernous emptiness. As I passed the arcade, lights flickered on by themselves, the machines shrieking with static. I glanced at the CCTV monitor outside the security office, hoping to spot Carl. That's when I saw it. Not mannequins, not shadows. A figure, towering, faceless, made of smoke and angles that didn't belong in this world. It drifted through walls like paper, and every camera caught it at the same time, as if the entire mall bent to show me its shape. I stumbled back, whispering the rules like a prayer. Don't look at the mannequins. Don't answer the voices. Don't open the door. They weren't suggestions, they were survival codes. The lights above me burst, showering glass. The mannequins all turned their heads in unison. For one paralyzing moment, I thought it was over. Then, I remembered. Stall number 3 in the food court bathroom. Never unlock it, which meant maybe something inside could help me. I ran, every step chased by scraping footsteps and distorted whispers. As I slammed the bathroom door shut, the noise outside stopped, like I'd stepped into a pocket of silence. I thought this was just a job, paycheck, but staring at the locked stall, listening to whatever breathes inside it, I realized the truth. I wasn't hired to guard the mall. I was hired to keep it contained. When the sun finally rose, it didn't feel like morning. The mall was quiet, still, too perfect, like nothing had ever happened. The mannequins were back behind the glass, the floors polished, the lights steady. Shoppers would arrive in a few hours, and no one would ever know that the place had nearly swallowed me alive. Carl was gone, his patrol route empty, his radio silent. I checked every wing, every maintenance closet, even the parking garage. Nothing. It was like he'd never existed. And that's when the dread set in. Maybe that's the job. You don't quit. You just vanish. I thought about the rule book, those yellowed pages covered in scrawled warnings. First, I'd laughed at them. Now, they were the only reason I was breathing. But as I traced my fingers over the last line, "Don't write any of this down," a shiver went through me. Because that's exactly what I'm doing now. Isn't it? Here's the part that keeps me awake. Last night wasn't unique. It was routine. Every midnight, the mall changes, and the guards who survive become part of the cycle. When one disappears, management just hires another. I used to think malls were about selling shoes and cheap food court pizza. Now I know they're cages. Not for us, for something else. So if you ever get hired as mall security, remember this: burn the rule book. Or maybe don't. Maybe the rules are the only thing keeping you alive. Tell me, what do you think this place really is? A feeding ground? Prison? Or something worse? Something we can't name? Drop your theories below, because I don't think I'll last long enough to figure it out. And if you hear about a new position opening up at the North Valley Mall, do yourself a favor. Don't apply, because once you're inside, there's no getting out.